Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel, The Loophole. Imagine waking up tomorrow and every dollar in your wallet is worthless. Not stolen, not lost, just turned off. By the time you reach for your phone to check your bank account, someone else has already decided what you can buy, where you can spend, and whether you deserve access at all. This isn't science fiction. It's the quiet revolution happening in central banks across the world right now. For the past 5 years, governments from China to Europe to the United States have been designing something called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. These are digital versions of national money, controlled entirely by the state, with every transaction recorded and potentially monitored in real time. Unlike the cash in your pocket or even the money in your bank account, CBDCs give governments unprecedented power to track, control, and even freeze your spending with a single keystroke. The push accelerated dramatically after the COVID-19 pandemic, when physical cash became suspect and digital payments exploded. By 2024, over 130 countries were exploring or piloting digital currencies, representing 98% of global GDP, according to the Atlantic Council's CBDC tracker. What began as a technological upgrade is now raising urgent questions about financial freedom, privacy, and the balance of power between citizens and the state. The story begins in 2014, when Ecuador became the first country to launch a government-controlled digital currency. The experiment failed within 4 years, with citizens rejecting the loss of financial anonymity and the system shutting down due to lack of trust. But the idea didn't die. It evolved. In 2016, China's central bank began serious research into what would become the digital yuan, or ECNY. By 2020, pilot programs were running in major cities like Shenzhen and Beijing. Citizens downloaded government apps, received digital currency in red envelope promotions, and spent it at approved merchants. Every transaction was logged. The system expanded rapidly, reaching over 260 million wallets by 2023, according to reports from the People's Bank of China. The European Central Bank announced its Digital Euro project in July 2021, framing it as a response to declining cash use and the rise of private cryptocurrencies. The Bank of England followed with its own consultation on a Bitcoin in 2022. In the United States, President Biden signed an executive order in March 2022 directing federal agencies to explore a digital dollar, citing national security and financial inclusion. The Federal Reserve released a discussion paper. Though it emphasized no decision had been made, the rhetoric shifted, noticeably after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, when Western nations froze billions in Russian central bank reserves and cut banks from the SWIFT payment system. It demonstrated the weaponization of the financial system. Countries around the world took note. China and Russia began discussions about alternative payment systems. More nations accelerated CBDC development, viewing it as both a tool of control and a shield against foreign sanctions. By 2023, Nigeria had launched the Naira, the Bahamas rolled out the Sand Dollar, and Jamaica introduced Jamdex. The International Monetary Fund and Bank for International Settlements published frameworks for cross-border CBDC systems. The infrastructure for a cashless world was no longer theoretical. It was being built, tested, and deployed. The case for CBDCs, as stated by central banks, focuses on efficiency and inclusion. The Federal Reserve's 2022 paper argued that a digital dollar could provide safe payment options for unbanked Americans and reduce transaction costs. The European Central Bank claimed a digital euro would ensure monetary sovereignty in an age of big tech payment platforms. These are the official narratives published in government reports and speeches. The concerns, however, come from policy documents and leaked proposals that reveal deeper capabilities. A 2023 working paper from the IMF discussed programmable money, where CBDCs could be coded to expire if not spent by a certain date, or restricted to specific types of purchases to influence consumption patterns. The paper framed this as a tool to stimulate economies during downturns. Critics called it coercive control. China's digital yuan system has confirmed features that alarm privacy advocates, according to analyses by the Atlantic Council and reports from Bloomberg. The People's Bank of China maintains the ability to track all transactions, freeze accounts without court orders, and set expiration dates on digital currency to force spending. The system includes a controllable anonymity feature, meaning the government can see everything, while users cannot see each other's transaction details. Human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, have documented how this infrastructure could be used to suppress dissent by cutting off financial access to activists and ethnic minorities. In Europe, leaked drafts of the digital euro proposal from 2023 showed plans for transaction limits and potential monitoring thresholds. The European Central Bank publicly stated these measures were to prevent money laundering and terrorism financing. Privacy advocates, including European Digital Rights, argued the architecture created a surveillance infrastructure that could be expanded far beyond its stated purpose. The United States has moved more cautiously. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testified to Congress in 2023 that any digital dollar would require congressional approval and would prioritize privacy. However, critics pointed to existing financial surveillance programs, including suspicious activity reports that banks already filed to the Treasury Department, as evidence that privacy promises may be limited. The Bank Policy Institute and various libertarian think tanks have warned that a CBDC could become a tool for social credit, systems similar to China's model supporters of CBDCs argue that the technology simply modernizes money for the digital age. They point to the decline of cash use, which fell to just 16% of all payments in the United States by 2022, according to Federal Reserve data, and even lower in countries like Sweden. They claim digital currencies can prevent financial crimes, reduce the costs of printing and transporting physical money, and provide instant payments during emergencies like natural disasters. The World Economic Forum has published multiple reports framing CBDCs as essential infrastructure for financial inclusion, especially in developing nations where banking access remains limited. Opponents counter that efficiency doesn't justify the erosion of freedom. They argue that cash provides anonymity, which is not about hiding crime, but about protecting normal citizens from surveillance. They cite historical examples of financial systems being weaponized, from Nazi Germany seizing Jewish assets to modern authoritarian regimes freezing opposition accounts. Organizations like the Cato Institute and Electronic Frontier Foundation warn that programmable money could enable social engineering on a massive scale, where governments dictate not just taxation, but consumption itself. A significant gap exists in the public discourse about consent. Most CBDC pilots have been opt-in, but several central bank documents discuss eventual mandates or the phase-out of physical cash. The Bank of England's consultation acknowledged that a digital pound might eventually become mandatory if cash infrastructure became economically unviable. This raises questions that remain largely unanswered. Will citizens have the right to refuse? Will physical cash remain available indefinitely? What happens to the vulnerable populations, including the elderly and unbanked who depend on cash? Another uncertainty involves cybersecurity. A centralized digital currency system becomes a single point of failure. If hacked or disrupted, an entire nation's monetary system could collapse instantly. The Federal Reserve's discussion paper acknowledged this risk, but provided few details on safeguards. Independent security researchers have warned that no system is unhackable, and the consequences of a CBDC breach would be catastrophic. For millions of people living under authoritarian regimes, financial control is already a reality. In China, reports from Radio Free Asia and interviews with Uyghurs in Xinjiang describe how digital payment systems have been used to restrict movement and punish dissent. Individuals flagged by authorities find their accounts frozen without explanation, unable to buy food, pay rent, or travel. The digital yuan expands this capability nationwide. In Nigeria, the Naira launch faced immediate resistance. Citizens protested the rushed implementation and concerns about government overreach, especially following the 2020 protests, where authorities froze bank accounts of activists organizing demonstrations. According to a 2023 report from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, adoption rates remained below 5% despite government incentives, reflecting deep distrust of state-controlled digital money. Even in democratic nations, vulnerable populations face risks. The elderly, who are less comfortable with technology, could be excluded from economic participation if cash disappears. The homeless, who rely on cash donations, would lose a critical lifeline. Domestic abuse survivors, who often need financial independence from controlling partners, could find escape harder if every transaction is tracked. These human costs rarely appear in central bank white papers, but they represent real consequences of system design choices. Think of money as a language. For thousands of years, that language was spoken privately between two people exchanging value. Cash is a conversation that no one else can hear. Digital payments through banks are like talking on a phone line, where the company operating the line keeps records. A CBDC is like speaking through a government microphone, where every word is recorded, analyzed, and stored forever. The deeper issue is power. Money is not just a tool for buying things, it's a form of freedom. The ability to save, spend, and transact without permission is fundamental to autonomy. When a government gains the technical ability to approve or deny every financial decision in real time, the relationship between citizen and state fundamentally changes. You move from a system where you must be proven guilty to access money, to one where you must be granted permission to use it. Historically, societies have struggled with this balance. The printing press decentralized information and weakened the control of kings and clergy. The internet did the same for communication. Physical cash has been one of the last remaining spaces of unmonitored exchange. Its removal, whether gradual or sudden, represents a shift towards centralization of power that hasn't been seen since the era before these technologies existed. The question isn't whether digital money can work technically. It's whether we trust the institutions controlling it to use that power wisely forever without abuse. Here's what we know for certain. Over 130 countries are actively developing or testing central bank digital currencies. The technology exists to track, limit, and program money in ways that were impossible with cash. China has already deployed such a system at scale, demonstrating both the capabilities and the risks. Here's what remains uncertain: whether democratic nations will implement similar controls, whether cash will remain available as an alternative, whether citizens will have meaningful choice in adoption. The next few years will determine whether CBDCs become tools of convenience or instruments of control. That decision is being made right now, often without public debate. In the near term, expect more pilot programs in major economies. The European Union is likely to begin testing the digital euro by late 2025 or early 2026, according to the European Central Bank's timeline. The United States may follow with limited trials in select cities, though political divisions make a nationwide rollout uncertain before 2028. Confidence level for expanded testing in the next 2 years is high. The critical turning point will be the treatment of cash. If governments begin closing bank branches that handle physical currency, limiting ATM access, or imposing transaction caps on cash use, it signals a deliberate push toward mandatory digital systems. Several European nations, including Sweden and Denmark, have already seen significant reductions in cash infrastructure. Whether this trend accelerates is a medium confidence scenario, dependent on both policy decisions and public resistance. The worst-case scenario, which remains low probability but high impact, involves a major crisis, whether financial, pandemic, or security-related, used as justification for emergency implementation of CBDCs with limited privacy protections. History shows that temporary emergency measures often become permanent. Civil liberties organizations are watching for this pattern. The best-case scenario involves transparent implementation with strong privacy protections, ongoing cash alternatives, and genuine public consent through democratic processes. Some central banks, including the Federal Reserve, have signaled openness to this approach, but political will and public pressure will determine whether promises translate to policy. Confidence level for this outcome is medium, contingent on sustained civic engagement. The digital dollar isn't coming as a revolution, it's arriving as an upgrade, framed in the language of progress and efficiency. But underneath the technical specifications and pilot programs lies a question that will define the next generation's relationship with freedom. Do we build a system where money serves people, or where people must ask permission to use money? If this story raised questions about how financial systems shape power, watch our next investigation. Social credit arrives in the West, when algorithms decide your worth, which explores how behavior-based access systems are already being tested in democracies. Source notes and disclaimer. This script draws on publicly available reports from the Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, People's Bank of China, International Monetary Fund, Bank for International Settlements, Atlantic Council CBDC Tracker, Human Rights Watch, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and coverage from Bloomberg, Radio Free Asia, and financial policy institutions. Claims about specific CBDC features are based on official documentation and verified news reports as of early 2025. The situation continues to evolve rapidly. This analysis represents one interpretation of complex policy developments and does not constitute financial or legal advice. Viewers are encouraged to research these issues independently and engage with their elected representatives on monetary policy.